So the topic here today, long-term care. How can I plan for long-term care? A roadmap. That's what we're here to talk about. Michael Gilfix, Mark Gilfix here, the Gilfix and Lepole team. We're not the only members of our team. We have amazing other attorneys, but it's always our pleasure to put on these webinars. And what are we here for? So I want you to take just a moment to think about why you joined us here today, because we had a huge response to this talk. It's about paying for long-term care, dealing and planning for long-term care. Is this something that keeps you up at night? Because here's a stat that I think is always really hits me. 70% of Americans over the age of 65 will require some form of long-term care. And by that, we just simply mean care that's not going to end, right? If you go to the hospital with a broken leg, you might be in the hospital for a little bit. You might have a cast, you might need some rehab, but it ends when you heal. Long-term care, on the other hand, well, it is exactly what it implies. It's long-term support that you're going to need indefinitely. And in most cases, you're going to need more and more over time. The cost can be extraordinary. Like we've seen clients spending over $20,000 a month per person for long-term care. Are you worried about this? Are you prepared for this? This talk is a roadmap. That's what we're here to talk about. Mike, I think you like this quote.
Oh, I do. I do. I get, not that this describes me, of course, in any realm, but here we go. Mark Twain. We've seen this. Don't put off till tomorrow what can be put off until the day after tomorrow, just as well. And the next image. Let's throw that image up there as well. Let's take a hard look at ourselves and ask ourselves: are we dealing with reality? Are we accepting it? If you wait for a crisis, that's bad. That's the antithesis of planning. So again, our job today, identify the issues, give you the highlights, the roadmap so that you'll be prepared. And I think, we've been doing this work for like 40 years. It isn't just something we learned from a book. We write the books. We'll go through that more in a moment.
That's right. And I see even more people have joined us. So welcome to all who have just joined. And let's go through our agenda because we have a bit to cover. We're going to go through it very efficiently. And of course, as we're going to say, this is an educational webinar. It's meant to inform you, empower you. We can't go through everything in all the detail we need to for you to become an expert yourself. That takes years of study. But we're going to tell you what you need to know, where you can get that help. That's so crucial. So what are the specific topics we're going to cover here today? Well, we're going to talk just generally about the 3 categories of long-term care. We're then going to talk about the essential legal and estate planning tools you have to have in place to deal with, yes, long-term care. Then we're going to talk about how you can pay the skyrocketing costs of, yes, long-term care, getting a theme here. We're going to talk about new Medi-Cal rules and how that fits in to paying for long-term care. It's a California-specific program. Very big changes happening. You need to understand what they are and what they aren't. We're going to talk about the use of home equity to pay for long-term care and 3 massive mistakes that we see some families make. So we're going to talk about what you need to potentially avoid or at least understand before you tap into home equity or doing it the right way to pay for long-term care. We're going to bring you an insider's secret to ensuring quality care no matter where you are, no matter what facility you're in. There's some secrets we've learned over the years. Mike's going to share that. And we're going to talk about the importance and power of integrated legal and financial planning, the importance of one hand talking to the other and making sure everything is integrated. So that's the focus here today. And I know many of you know us. We don't actually market these webinars that much outside of our client community. So many of you probably know us or have worked with us, but those of you who don't, just a quick intro about our firm. We are Gilfix and Lepole Associates. We are national leaders in special needs planning, estate planning, tax planning, and long-term care planning. It's a family-oriented business. While Mike and I are principals in the firm, we also have Francis Lepole, Nick Klingenberg, Renee Connors, some amazing other attorneys, and a big support team. 40 years in the Bay Area. We're going to do a 40-year celebration soon, based in Palo Alto, but we serve families throughout the state of California, from San Diego to Wairika. In fact, we have an attorney based in San Diego, Nick Klingenberg. And our goal is to provide extraordinary value and peace of mind for your future, your child's future, and your long-term care future. We've been featured in the media, Wall Street Journal, USA Today, TV. And just really quickly, we're not going to spend too much time on this, but again, if you don't know us, we do think it's important to know, why am I listening to these 2 Gilfix guys? Let me just do a very brief intro for Michael Gilfix. So he is, as you may have guessed it, my dad, and I'm having worked with him for a while. People say I am now acting too much like him. I don't know how good or bad that is. You can be the judge of that. Are our mannerisms the same? I don't know. But he graduated from Stanford Law School, grew up in a small town in Michigan. But I think it's important. He's been involved in this since 1973 when he really helped to create the field of elder law. He created America's first free legal aid program for the elderly, SOLAS, Senior Adults Legal Assistance. It still exists today, and he trained hundreds of other attorneys throughout the country to start other free legal aid programs, raised millions of dollars, and really planted the seeds and started the field of elder law. He also was a founder of a co-founder of the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys, the preeminent organization in our field. Founded the Disability Law Center, of course, the founder of our firm, Gilfix and Lopole Associates, along with Myra Gerson Gilfix, Francis Lopole, who came in the early days. A keynote speaker at big conferences, regular appearances on the radio, national media. So just to say, he knows what he's talking about. That's the main point, and he's a nationally sought after speaker. So it's my privilege to get to present with him today. And Mike, you can do a very brief intro for me. I don't have as illustrious a background, though.
Well, you're making your mark, no pun intended, left and right. Mark has done an amazing amount of writing. He's been getting awards for being one of the bright faces of the future when it comes to these fields of law. You'll get it. I mean, Mark has learned these things so quickly. Lots of writing, speaking all over the place. He's a media guy. That might not surprise you. Been on TV many times, on the radio and so forth. But more importantly, I mean, Mark has developed such a deep commitment to these issues that we're here for decades and decades into the future, not just the past, always building the resume. So, it's a pleasure and a privilege to be working together. And this is the book that we co-authored, by the way, Facing the Reality of Long-Term Care. In a way, it's a little bit out of date. We'll give you some updates today. But again, this is a book that has been now purchased by and distributed to thousands of individuals. It's reliable in terms of the highlights about how you plan for dealing with the cost of long-term care. So again, we're always out there writing, teaching, and instructing.
Absolutely. And we think about it, and it's a family issue for us. My grandmother needed long-term care, and Dad, I hope you don't need it anytime soon, but we got to be aware about this for ourselves.
I am in that age group. I am in that age group.
You're getting there, doing okay. So I think this is really notable. There was a recent Wall Street Journal article that I think hits home. It really illustrates the point of how challenging this is. So Mike, why don't you just really brief, I'll share just the cover of that, the meaning of this, what this article was about and why it's relevant.
This is so poignant. This is so powerful. So here is a lady who worked for AARP, and she was one of their experts on long-term care and how do you plan? And she got into her own family situation, and she became like a family member rather than an expert. And she just, I think, maybe lost objectivity, was so consumed. She didn't do good planning. She went bankrupt providing care for her family. And this is just, again, she's an expert. When you deal with these issues, you lose your ability to be objective and think clearly. That is the role for experts like us. Now, let's say it directly. We know these issues. And if you don't get a good advice, you're going to make mistakes. It's virtually inevitable. So let's learn a lesson here and make sure that you don't make those mistakes.
I couldn't say it better myself. Now, let's set the stage here. There are three broad categories of long-term care: home assisted living and nursing home. Mike, why don't you just take a moment going through why this is relevant, why we have to think about these categories?
Sure. Long-term care is really a spectrum. It means, again, as Mark said earlier, care that you need on an ongoing basis because of some physiological, sometimes dementia issues can creep in, those kinds of things. So you can be at home and you need support with these things called the activities of daily living or just getting by. You may move to, let's call it an intermediate facility, assisted living, where you're living independently. The more help you need, the more help you get, and the more the cost goes up. And then there are residential care facilities. But the next third most significant category, of course, God forbid, you should be in a skilled nursing facility because your needs are so great. Differing cost exposure, different ways of paying for those levels of care. That's what we're going to go through today.
We'll talk about, yeah. Yeah, and I think most people don't want to go to an assisted living facility or don't want to go to a nursing home, but there are cases where this can absolutely be the right thing. One striking thing, this isn't really the subject, but did you know that a fall later in life where you break a hip has the same prognosis or sometimes worse than stage 4 cancer? As in the 5-year survival rate, if you fall and are not caught and injure yourself seriously, when you get over, I don't know if it's 75 or 80, the prognosis is worse than an advanced cancer diagnosis. So getting the right care, getting the right support before it's absolutely urgent is just so crucial. So let's jump in. And we did emphasize before, this is all for educational purposes. It's not meant to be legal advice. You need to work with us directly to get legal advice. I'm not sure if I said that earlier. We're lawyers. We got to be careful about these things. Our mission is to inform and empower you. Now let's talk about estate planning tools and the critical estate planning tools that we need to have in place. So planning for long-term care, you need to have some critical estate planning tools set in advance. You cannot wait for a crisis. What are these critical tools? So Mike, why don't you lead us through the specific documents you need and what you need to think about as you put these documents into place and really update them every couple of years. What are these documents and how do they work?
Sure, I think the most important introductory comment, and this is obvious the moment you think about it. If you have a vanilla plan where just no real thought was given to it, no thought to the possibility or the 70% probability that you'll need some form of long-term care, you might not, probably won't have some of the critical language that you need in those documents. Again, isn't it obvious once you think about it? Everybody's different. We need to be prepared for these situations. So your revocable trust, it is relevant to these planning opportunities. If you don't structure things properly, you might lose benefits. You need to empower individuals to make changes that might be needed. The durable power of attorney can be the most critical document in this context of asset protection, qualifying for government benefits. Bottom line, with the power of attorney, there needs to be explicit language that deals with long-term care challenges, empowering the individual you choose, your attorney, in fact, to make the changes that are needed. Again, a vanilla, simple power of attorney does not work in those circumstances. Can add dramatically to the fees, the hassles, the time that it takes to put a good plan in place. Again, isn't it obvious once you think about it? And the advance directive, of course. Do you want to age in place and stay at home no matter what? Or what? What are the issues you want to address? Your document needs to be explicit so that your healthcare decision-making agent knows what you want, takes all the appropriate steps to make sure that your wishes are honored. It needs to be coordinated with these points in mind.
Yeah. So just to summarize, it's critical you have an estate plan, revocable living trust, durable power of attorney for finance, advanced healthcare directive that covers your financial and healthcare decision-making. But as Mike pointed out, don't just do check the box simple form. You need to work with an expert. And obviously we at Gilfix in the poll, gilfix.com, shameless plug, we can help you and we've helped hundreds and hundreds of families to make sure they have the right provisions in those documents. So even if, God forbid, you don't work with us, you have to make sure that your documents include the right provisions around long-term care asset protection planning and tax planning. So just having that up-to-date plan, revisiting it every 3 to 5 years, making sure the right people are empowered in these documents. That's really what they are, right? You're empowering someone through a legal document, and you got to give them the right powers. So we can help review your plan if you want and make sure it's right up to date. If you work with us, we can update it anytime. Got to make sure that's all in place. Okay, so I think this next subject is really, really important. I think many people, this is what keeps a lot of people up at night. Let me share the screen here. How am I going to pay? How can I pay for long-term care? It keeps so many of our clients up at night. 4 expert strategies. If you have questions, by the way, leave them in the comments, or we try to get to those as much as we can, the Q&A function. But how do you pay for long-term care? We're going to outline 4 key strategies. Nothing's perfect. It's a mix and match for many families, but let's talk about what these general 4 strategies are to pay for this extraordinary cost. Because the cost, as we've talked about before, can be up to $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 a month in some cases. What can you do to plan for that? And Mike, actually, I'll go through the high level 4 categories that we really look at. So the 4 strategies we often see and that we think work for paying for long-term care. There's 2 insurance ones. So one is just owning long-term care insurance. We'll expand on that a little bit. And we know it's imperfect. We have a lot of clients say, my policy, my expenses are going up a lot. We'll talk about why that might not be such a bad thing. 2, hybrid life and long-term care insurance. So you can get, some people don't like the idea of long-term care insurance. It's like, well, I hope I never need to use it and that money was wasted. Although I heard a good quote, what type of insurance do you get that you actually want to use, right? I mean, I don't think any of us want our insurance policies to come into play, but there are hybrid policies. So if you don't use it, if you don't need long-term care, your family gets a death benefit. And it's like a life insurance policy. And if we're going to talk about this more, but if you have an old life insurance policy you've had for a long time, talk to us. We can often convert them. We'll talk about that more later. Government programs, IHSS, VA benefits, and Medi-Cal, the California version of the federal Medicaid program. We'll talk about that. And then, of course, the last category is just self-insurance, saving up enough, investing well so you can afford the care yourself. Some people like to do that. I think what's not an option is planning. That's what's not an option. So let's now talk about the first category, and that's insurance. So Mike, why don't you lead us through how we see long-term care and life hybrid policies?
Sure. There was a time when we were real critics of long-term care insurance policies. I won't go through all of those reasons, but the industry has matured and the cost has gone up. The cost of insurance, but also more importantly, the cost of care. So you have to think about this. If you're insurable, you can be in your 70s and still get such a policy. And we do work with a team of individuals, by the way, who can very efficiently, no charge to figure out if you're eligible. He can give you cost estimates. What are the options? What are the provisions that you want to include? Very significantly, so many individuals have an existing policy, and a life insurance policy. And there is the opportunity for taking advantage of cash value that you might have in your policy. Sometimes you can kind of trade up for a more sizable life insurance policy. But again, many individuals will use that cash value in their life insurance policy to kind of convert that policy into either a pure long-term care insurance policy or this idea of a hybrid. And again, the hybrid means, and Mark said it so well, that we don't want to assume you're going to need long-term care. You like the idea of insurance. So if you don't need to cash in the policy for long-term care insurance benefits, and the bar is pretty high, you have to show that you need help with 3 or 4 of these things called ADLs, activities of daily living. So it doesn't pay for having the laundry done or your food prepared at home. You have to have a pretty high level of need. But again, we can get a lot of comfort knowing that we have some backup there so that our family members won't have to hassle if we do need this high level of care. It can help you sleep at night. So again, if you have an existing policy where you've got cash value, come in and talk with our insurance expert just to see what the options are. And by the way, that tends to be cost-free. You're using the cash value in your policy to purchase a different policy. I can give you countless examples where, again, peace of mind has been the goal and has been achieved by taking maybe $50,000, $60,000 in cash value, using that to purchase outright a long-term care insurance policy, no ongoing premiums, and you have maybe $300,000, $400,000 worth of coverage from that. The math does work out that way. So we have to think through that option. If you're already facing serious challenges, of course, it's too late to get long-term care insurance, but it has to be on the list of things to think through.
And Mike, we get this comment a lot. A lot of clients I've met with in the last few months and really the last few years, they say, well, I have long-term care insurance, but they keep increasing the premium. Should I keep it? This is so, can you just talk briefly about why that's happened? Why we now are kind of like, okay, we get it.
Yeah, that's really tough. I mean, when the industry created and started selling long-term care insurance policies, the underwriters rarely made huge mistakes. They didn't fully appreciate the number of people who had used the benefits of the policies and the extent of use. So that's why a number of long-term care insurance companies went bankrupt, went out of business. There are some companies that are taking a second look at it these days. So the fact is, whether we like it or not, they are businesses. If you want to have that insurance, they are looking at the cost of maintaining those policies and paying out benefits. And they say, look, we have to raise the rates. So generally speaking, the more concerned you are about this cost, and maybe the more this need has been in the family, sometimes it makes a great deal of sense. But here's the value of sitting down and going through the numbers with the professional who can sort of do a formula and say, look, if you do this, here's your level of coverage. If you self-insure and invest the money this way, you'll have this much coverage. And then we start to integrate it with other resources, which we'll be getting to in just a moment, like Medi-Cal. And how do you fit all that together? That's the long-term goal for us.
Yeah, and I mean, Keith, if you have a question about this, contact us. If you have an old life insurance policy with a cash value, do not just cash it in, talk to us. Gilfix.com. We can connect you with the right experts to look at it. Let's talk briefly about government programs. We're going to go into Medi-Cal rules later in this webinar. We're not going to dive into that just yet. There are government programs that can help pay for long-term care. I think really importantly, though, this is so the high level 3, and this is not complete. There are other programs out there, and we could spend 2 hours going through a laundry list of different programs, but these are the big ones that we see most commonly. So Medi-Cal, Medi-Cal can pay for the cost of nursing home care. That very notably, it doesn't really help in other categories so much, but Medi-Cal is the big one. If you have to go to a nursing home and you're eligible, we'll talk about eligibility rules in a second, that can be their IHSS, in-home support services, can provide some benefits for care at home. And if you're a veteran, there's obviously VA programs. Very importantly, though, I think there's a lot of confusion here about Medicare versus Medi-Cal. Mike, why don't you lead us through that?
The last time I looked at the AARP that asked people over the age of 60, they were asked, do you think that Medicare will pay the cost of nursing home care? This was about 5 or 6 years ago. And at that point in time, a majority, in fact, it was 60%. That's why I remember 60% of those over the age of 60 said, yeah, Medicare is going to pay my cost of nursing home care if I need it. Absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. So the major problem that flows from that fact is that all of those individuals who think they're covered, they're not going to plan. They're not going to plan. And by definition, they're going to waste resources. Quality of care may suffer. It goes on and on. So we emphasize the government program that can pay for the cost of nursing home care is Medi-Cal, California's version of the federal Medicaid program. Yes, Mark.
Yeah, and by the way, you're here. You're watching this, whether you're watching it live or as a recording, you are here. You are ahead of the game. I just want to emphasize that. So few people understand this. So thank you for being here and spread the word about this. We have a lot more to go through, but if this is useful, you find this talk useful, it's on our YouTube channel, the Gilfix Law YouTube channel. Share it with anybody who needs to see it. Maybe it's your parents that need to see this in many cases. If you're the child who's going to have to deal with this, because it's often us, the adult children, who are going to have to carry that load, right, Dad? I'm aware I may have to be taking care of you down the road. So hopefully not for a long time.
Yeah, I hope my wife, his mother, is listening and wrote that down so we can quote him. We'll make a gigantic sign. We'll tape it to the ceiling in the living room at home. Got you covered.
I got 2 other sisters too, Shauna and Jamie, who will help. I hope, and hopefully in no time soon. It's an interesting point, though. We're not going to spend much time on this, but family members, so many people are, and raise your hand silently if you are taking care of a parent right now. I can't really see. You can raise it in the webinar or online, or comment if you're watching this on YouTube. Are you taking care of a parent now? Does this worry you? We have so many people who are clients who are the members of the sandwich generation, meaning they're taking care of their kids and their parents at the same time. And you can get compensated for that through some long-term care policies. So if you're getting the Medi-Cal IHSS program, VA home care, some forms of long-term care insurance can pay family members for care that they're providing to loved ones. So just pointing that out. Let's talk about the other way to pay for care. And this is how most people, I think, inadvertently do it: self-insure. So what do we mean by that? Well, it's very simply paying for long-term care by saving up enough money, investing it well, accessing home equity maybe the right way. We have other videos, and we're going to talk about the dangers of 3 ways not to do it, or at least the 3 issues to be aware of before you do that. But this means paying out of pocket, right? And so this begs the question: do you have an up-to-date financial plan? Have you just been kind of trading your own stocks? Have you been keeping it in bank accounts? We see banks failing now. We see inflation out of control. Are your investments keeping up? Have you thought about this? Do you have a professional team in place? Can you cover potentially massive cost increases? The cost we see right now, probably just a fraction of what they'll be in 5 years and 10 years. Do you have the right allocation of investments? And do you work with an integrated legal and financial team that understands this? Because it is really important that one hand is talking to the other. We're going to talk about that more. I think the key here is, let's say that you do all the investing for your family. What happens when you pass away? We see this often. Sometimes it's wives managing it, the husbands don't touch it. Sometimes it's the husband managing it, the wife doesn't touch it. Do you have that team in place to make sure that if something happens to you, there's a team there to make sure investments are properly allocated? And ahead of time, do you have projections in place that say, okay, are we going to be okay or not? Are we aware of tax issues, public benefits eligibility issues? So we're going to talk about this more, but we're developing a new integrated legal and financial team for a select group of clients who are interested in this. You can contact us at gilfix.com. We're going to talk about that more. But if you have a great advisor who you love, that's great. Keep working with them, but let's make sure that if you work with us on the legal side, we talk to them. And if you don't have a team you feel great about, we want to make sure that it's integrated. But you need to just address your financial plan. We are not financial advisors. We're lawyers, but we have a lot of background looking through, helping clients think this through from a financial planning side. So the last category is insuring yourself, and just saying, and maybe you could do both. Maybe you get long-term care insurance for the worst case scenario, but you plan on paying for care ahead of time out of your pocket. But you need to be prepared. So I hope those 4 categories were helpful. So again, it's long-term care insurance, life insurance or life and long-term care hybrid policies. If you have an old policy, let's look at maybe trading it in a tax-free way. It's self-insurance, paying for it out of pocket, saving up enough, and of course, government benefit programs. I think that's a good segue. The next category, planning for long-term care. And actually make sure I'm sharing the slide to make it very visually clear. We know it's hard to keep track of all of this. How do you pay and plan for long-term care? We need to be aware of new Medi-Cal rules as we plan for long-term care, because there have been some major changes to Medi-Cal, the California version of the federal Medicaid program, which, Mike, why don't you talk about what it can cover and what the rules are today and and how it's changed.
So this is huge. If you have our book, by the way, it's out of date on the issue of eligibility. The book says, because it was the case until just last year, that to be eligible for Medi-Cal coverage in a long-term care facility, you couldn't have more than $2,000 in your name. Now, your spouse could have maybe 130, 140,000, but in your name, no more than 2,000. That changed dramatically this year. The individual in a skilled nursing facility can have up to $130,000, and that's actually a minimum figure, because sometimes we can increase that. A minimum of $130,000 while becoming eligible for Medi-Cal. Now, if you're a married couple, the spouse at home gets to keep a little over $140,000, almost $145,000. This is just presumptive eligibility. Now, there are many assets that are exempt that don't count. The value of your house doesn't count. Money in your retirement account doesn't count. So you can see you can have a $2, $3, $5 million estate today and qualify for Medi-Cal. And even if you're $500,000 over the limit, with good planning, we can protect those assets, get down to the point of eligibility, save everything, and still qualify for Medi-Cal. We've been doing that for clients in appropriate circumstances for decades. It works. We can do that. I wouldn't say routinely, because everybody's different. There's tax considerations we have to really think through, but it can all be done. Now, what happens next year? Hold on to your hats. Hold on to your hats. In 2024, our legislature has eliminated the cap on assets for eligibility. It's unbelievable. Now, we believe in healthcare for all. We want everybody to be cared for. But is this practical? We're a little worried about whether this is going to play out as envisioned, where everybody will become eligible.
Maybe Elon Musk will move back to California, because as a billionaire, he could be eligible for Medi-Cal.
What a wonderful image. Can you just see it? Here's Elon. You probably do want to see him in a nursing home, by the way. You probably do want to see that. But, he's an amazing guy. He's got many new creations coming up, about another one in AI, by the way, that is very interesting. But as an aside, that's the aside. Okay, everybody's going to be eligible. So that's the reality. So everybody's going to qualify. Now, is that all good? It can be, as long as we're very careful about quality of care, have our eyes open. Even if you qualify for Medi-Cal, if you have income, all or most of your income might have to go to the nursing home toward the cost of care before Medi-Cal kicks in. So that's still a major planning issue, even if you are eligible. Regardless of whether you have 100,000 or 100 million, income has to be separately analyzed. But let's call that a fine point. Will that continue to be the law? Probably. The state is projected to have a deficit next year, not a surplus. So where is all the extra money going to come from? From the feds, from the state? That, I think, is an open question, because this is going to add a few $100 billion to the Medi-Cal responsibility. So who knows what's going to happen?
And what does that mean for availability? We already have a shortage of nursing homes that will accept Medi-Cal, because for Medi-Cal to pay, it has to be at a nursing home that is Medi-Cal certified, meaning they accept those benefits. And nursing homes make less money when they accept Medi-Cal than they do when someone's paying out of their pocket. So that lends itself to making sure, even if you're going to maybe rely on Medi-Cal, you may want to get to the top of the list to get into the right home or the right facility by paying out of pocket first and then later converting. So that goes back to having long-term care insurance, the right legal and financial planning tools in place, making sure you have that sophisticated durable power of attorney, the right trust in place, that you understand how to use home equity and how not to use it, that you have that integrated legal and financial team. And of course, we can help with all of it. If you have questions about this, feel free to leave it in the Q&A function or the comments function. It's a lot, but sorry, Mike, go ahead.
I know it's getting a little redundant, but you look at all these moving parts. You look at these different levels of care. Experience is priceless. We have worked through these situations for hundreds of families over the years, and we watch these things carefully. We write about them. We teach about them. So, watch out for trusting chat AI. Watch out for surface knowledge. We're direct. Our experience is invaluable. You're paying us for our experience and our knowledge, our counseling, and to know what levers to push in what circumstance to give you the most protection. I hope that's obvious.
Yeah, absolutely. We might talk. Let's just talk briefly about AI and planning in this area. And this is there are areas, there's no doubt, where AI is very useful at getting you some basic information. But there's also something called, I think it's hallucinations, where AI will often make stuff up, and it's going to be a long time before that's fixed. And it's not good at nuanced situations. So, yeah, it's self-serving, but you don't rely on AI-enabled tools anytime soon for this, because it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach for Medi-Cal planning, for asset planning, for any of these rules. They change all the time. There's a lot of nuance to them. We have to look at your situation, your family dynamics to plan for that. So let's all be careful there. Now, let's go to the next subject. I think this is important. We see a lot of mistakes in this area, and I think this section alone of our presentation could be worth the time you're spending with us. I hope everything is. But I think it may seem kind of basic here, but we see a lot of mistakes in this area. So as we plan for long-term care, as we think about planning for long-term care, we see three massive mistakes that families make when they use home equity. So let's say many of our clients, we have hundreds of clients where the bulk of their estate is held in the value of their home. If you own a home in much of the Bay Area, on the peninsula, in Palo Alto, Mountain View, Los Altos, Burlingame, or Los Angeles, West LA, San Diego, your home is worth a lot, right? If you've had it for a long time, you probably have a lot of equity. And a lot of people think, well, I use my home to pay for long-term care. Maybe I'll look at insurance. Maybe I'll try to, save and invest a lot. I don't want to use my home. Be really careful with that, especially if you have kids who you want to help down the road, or if you want to keep a house in the family. There's some big mistakes that we see made. What are the three biggest mistakes? Just to be clear, these are not mistakes in every situation. We're not just giving a blanket, don't ever do this. It's just we want you to understand what these different options can entail and why they can be so bad. So one mistake, people getting reverse mortgages without understanding the downside. You hear a lot of, and nothing against reverse mortgage brokers. There are situations where it can make sense. But I'm going to talk briefly in a second about why reverse mortgages can be problematic from a tax standpoint, especially if you want to leave your home to your kids or protect it for them. 2, selling the home. We'll talk about that in just a moment, the downside of just simply selling the home without the right planning ahead of time. And 3, we're going to talk about if you want to keep your home for the next generation. If you watch our other talks, I know we hammer this, but you need to understand Prop 19 in California because it has massive implications for leaving your home to your kids, and especially if you have any other property. So why don't I just I'm going to go through each of these. I'm going to start with reverse mortgages. So many of you here, maybe you have a reverse mortgage, or maybe someone in your family has gotten one, but let's talk about just at a high level, what is a reverse mortgage? So a reverse mortgage is where you work with a broker and you take equity out of your home. It's not a home equity line of credit. You can actually either get a big cash payout, or you can get ongoing monthly payments, and you don't have to pay it back till later. Maybe you have to make small payments up front, but the loan is not due until certain things happen. But that's the key. So a lot of people think, oh, I'll just get a reverse mortgage. I have all this equity in my home. Not a problem. Here's the problem with reverse mortgages, and this relates to capital gains taxes. So if you get a reverse mortgage, people think, oh, I don't have to sell my house. The loan's not due until I pass away. And when you pass away, everything in your estate gets a stepped up cost basis, meaning capital gains tax exposure vanishes. It's a huge gift to your surviving family members. So if you've owned your home for a long time, it's probably worth a lot more than you paid. If you sold it today, you might have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in capital gains taxes. So why does this make reverse mortgages a bad idea? Because reverse mortgages typically become due when you move out of your house. So let's say you need long-term care and you have to move to assisted living facility or to, God forbid, a nursing home. Typically, they'll give you 6 months, and you can often extend that to a year. And maybe there's different rules for different policies, but it's typically a max of 1 year that you're out of the house before the loan is called. It's due. And what does that mean? It means your house has to get sold. And what does that mean? Well, you're selling it while you're still alive. You're going to probably have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in capital gains taxes. If you can find a way to hold on to the house until you pass away, you get the stepped up basis. Oh, and Mike talked about the fact that your home is an exempt asset when it comes to Medi-Cal eligibility. Now, we know that the asset test is technically going away next year, but it could come back in the future. Or what if you move to another state? They're not so flexible as California. So be really careful with reverse mortgages. Talk to us before you do it. If you don't have kids, if you're not concerned about leaving assets for the next generation, that's okay. We have some clients who don't, and the reverse mortgage made sense. But let's understand it before we jump in. Category 2. The second mistake, selling the home without understanding the tax implications. Well, we just kind of talked about that. But a lot of people think, well, if I need expensive long-term care, I'll just sell my house. Capital gains taxes are a massive, massive problem. And Medi-Cal eligibility for government programs. So keeping your home, again, in California and other states, your home is an exempt asset for eligibility for Medi-Cal. And yes, the eligibility rules are changing, but they could come back. Houses have always been exempt, your primary residence at least. If you sell the house while you're still living, again, capital gains taxes. You might pay $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in unnecessary capital gains taxes if you just think of selling the house. Alternative options, by the way, to getting a reverse mortgage or selling your house, one would be getting a home equity line of credit. You might need a child. Hey, kids, let's talk to our parents about this. You might need a child to co-sign on the loan, but a much better option than reverse mortgages because they don't come due when you move out. Maybe you rent out your house to get coverage. Reverse mortgage means you have to pay off the loan right away. If you get a home equity line of credit, maybe that can cover you. Maybe you don't need to sell the house. You rent it out to pay those payments. So really important to understand that option 2 is you rent the house out, and if you want more income, you do a 1031 exchange. So you don't sell the house and incur a huge capital gains tax bill. You can do a like-kind exchange. We have other videos about 1031 exchanges. And then you don't pay capital gains taxes. You can convert your home equity into a rental property that kicks out a lot of cash to pay for long-term care. So 2 wonderful ways that are different from just selling the house or getting a reverse mortgage. So talk to us. You can contact us at gilfix.com if you want to explore this. We have no stake in this. We don't make any money if you get a reverse mortgage or not. We just want to be your advisor there. We want to make sure you're aware of it. So many people come to us after they made that mistake. The third mistake is not planning for property taxes for your kids. So let's say you're right. Okay, I get it, Mark and Mike. I'm not going to sell my house. I'm not going to do a reverse mortgage. I want to keep the house for the next generation. But we have this hidden issue. We're not going to spend too much time. We have a lot of other talks about this. But let's just take a moment to talk about Prop 19. You might be, if you watch our talks a lot, we talked about it. Mike, go through that for our audience today.
Yeah, the problem in the context of long-term care is that you, whether you're the parent, the person experiencing the need, the kid who's taking care of the parents, you're so consumed with worry and the anxiety of maintaining quality of care that everything else becomes secondary. Perfectly natural. But one of the many problems that can result is you don't think about this new development in the law. This is like only a year and a half or 2 years old, this Proposition 19. The best laid plans in terms of saving the home for the next generation, where you don't have a reverse mortgage, you don't have any mortgage, because you want the kids to inherit your house or that nice cabin in the mountains, whatever it may be. So before Prop 19, you could pass along your home and another $1 million, usually 1 or 2 other properties to your kids, no property tax increase. So that has changed. Now, let's assume that you have your home and you want it to go to your kids, but they're not going to live in it. Let's assume your house is worth $3.5 million and the taxes are now $3,000. The taxes on your passing, because of Proposition 19, will go to maybe $36,000, $37,000 a year. That's over $30,000 a year in increases. That can make it impossible for your kid to maintain the house because they don't have the money to service that property tax liability every year going forward, 10 years, 20 years. It's a massive amount of money. So you have to really be aware of that. Now, if your child, there's one limited exception, if your child makes the home, his or her home, the first $1 million in assessed value is forgiven. So in my simple example, if the home is worth $3.4 million, the new assessed value would be $2.4 million. property taxes would still go from $3,000 or $4,000 up to about $26,000. So even if your kid lives in the house, that is no answer. That is no panacea. So we have to be thinking second level. What are the family goals? What are your goals? Do you want to have quality of care and preserve the home for your kids? Usually that is the case. 90% of us want that. So we have to have our eyes open to this looming crisis that befalls your kids at the time of your passing. Again, a dramatic property tax increase. Hardly anybody knows about this. If you follow our webinars, you know, because we're on this constantly. We are aware and we can deal with it, right, Mark?
Absolutely. So you can, some of our most viewed long webinars actually are about the end of Prop 13, Prop 19 planning. So look at our Gilfix Law YouTube channel. We have a few, we just did a recent one just I think 3 or 4 weeks ago, because we get questions about this all the time. We've already helped hundreds of families with this. Don't get left behind. So if you do want to leave your home and or any other properties to the next generation in the context of long-term care or not, we've got to plan ahead, and we have developed solutions. And Mike mentioned there are some exemptions for your primary residence under Prop 19, but what if you move out and you rent it out for a while to pay for long-term care? You might lose even those limited protections. We can keep taxes low for the next generation, and we can still capture optimal tax treatment, get the stepped up in basis, if that makes sense. We can keep taxes low and can protect properties for future generations. We developed a multi-step dynasty LLC and trust approach. We're not going to spend time on it here. We have plenty of other talks about that. But if you are concerned, if you have property or properties with low property taxes, and you want to preserve that for your kids to pay for their long-term care down the road, among other things, we have to lock it in now. Because once property taxes spike up, if you don't plan, and these just go to your kids when you pass away, property taxes go up, they never come back down. You lose that opportunity. So if you're concerned about this, contact us at gilfix.com. Again, we've already helped hundreds of families with this. We have incredible solutions developed by our tax guru, Francis LaPole. He's uniquely qualified in this area, a real estate expert, a tax expert. I think we were one of the first firms in California, one of the few that truly understands this issue. So let's just go back to review this. The 3 big mistakes that families make when trying to use home equity to pay for long-term care or thinking about it. 1, getting reverse mortgages and not understanding that due on moving out clause in those policies and the fact you might be forced to sell before you think. 2, selling the house, right? Just selling it, taking a huge capital gains tax hit, maybe losing a low property tax base for future generations, getting an asset that used to be exempt for Medi-Cal and Medicaid eligibility. All of a sudden you have a bunch of cash that might eliminate your ability to get certain benefits. 3, forgetting to plan about property taxes. So let's say you smartly hold on to the house. Great, but what if property taxes go up by 10,000%? We've literally seen, I think we've seen, not 10,000, 1,000%. Sorry, that's a little bit of exaggeration. But we've seen property taxes go up by 30 or 40 or even $50,000 per year for individual properties. Got to plan for that. So let's not make mistakes with our home equity when planning for long-term care. And this is where talking to your kids is so important. All right, we're getting to the final couple subjects of our talk, and I see a couple questions coming in. We'll get to those at the end. And again, if you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to leave comments or questions if you have those, or if any of this stuff strikes you as, whoa, I didn't understand this, leave the comment. This is crazy stuff. The next, and this is kind of a more, I think, I don't know if you want to call it fun, but planning for long-term, we have worked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of families in this area. We want to share an insider's secret to ensuring quality of care, no matter where you are, no matter what facility you're in. It's a secret. And I think, Mike, you coined this term. So why don't you lead us through what this secret is? It's not about just who spends the most money. This is a way to ensure quality care.
And it seems simple once we say it, but I sure have learned over the years that family members just don't sufficiently drink this in. This is absolutely huge. Long-term care is about quality of life, right? It's sustaining you wherever you may be. It isn't just, is there going to be a bed and is there going to be a nurse around if you need it? It's quality of life, maintaining as much quality as possible as you may lose the ability to function on some level. So what about that? If you're at home, theoretically, people are checking on you, you're in your community. If you're in assisted living or particularly in a nursing home, what is the key? The key is a term that I coined about 35 years ago. Lots of lawyers have stolen it, so I know it's good. Cookies and thorns. Cookies and thorns. That means if somebody's in a nursing home, family members have to visit, and they have to visit often. And when they visit, here's the key, bring cookies, bring cake for the staff. So they know you, so you're not anonymous. So that Mrs. Jones over here is the mother of those nice people who bring in that snack for us. Distinguish yourselves. If they know you, you get more attention. It's just obvious. What about the thorns? If you're in a facility and you see something isn't right, whether it's your loved one or not, you have to call them on it. You have to be a gentle or maybe a sharp thorn in their side. And if you can't visit often, that's what money is for. You hire people, you hire caregivers, you hire social workers, you hire somebody to visit mom if you can't do it. My favorite of my many stories, one of our more creative clients, a woman in her late 50s, very eccentric, very aggressive. She made sure that the staff members at the nursing home where her mom was living knew that mom had 2 daughters, which she didn't have. What this lady did is 2 or 3 times a month, she would put on this red wig in the middle of the night. She would go visit the nursing home and drop in and say, I'm Sybil. And she would like shake up the staff, convince them that Sybil could drop by anytime. And she was the tough daughter. You know, the other one was the sweet daughter. But, you know, didn't she get it? Didn't she live it? And she swears that made a major difference in quality of care for her mom. So keep that in mind, Mark. Keep that
Good
in
idea.
mind.
I got to get a wig. Leave a comment if you think
There
I
you
should get a
go.
purple wig, a blonde wig. What colored wig should I use to play the bad cop version of myself? But I think that's a great point. You need the good cop, bad cop. And if you have 2
You
kids,
do.
maybe one plays that role every time. It might be their personalities anyway. I can be both. I have to sometimes be the bad cop as a lawyer. I think my sister Jamie would be good as the tough. She's not bad cop, but she's tougher. I could be tough when I need to, but you know, you got to find that balance. I got to get the wig to be the bad cop Mark. So I think that I know this seems simple, but the cookies and thorns statement wasn't the crux of all that we're talking about. But we've seen clients like at the V or gold plated facilities spending $20, $25, $30,000 a month for couples where they're kind of getting ignored and they're not getting good care. Conversely, we've seen clients in these facilities that you look at them from the outside, you're like, oh my God, who would have their parents there? And they're getting great care because their kids are regularly visiting. They get to know the staff and the staff is super attentive. So it's not, we hear people say, well, I don't ever want to rely on Medi-Cal. Those facilities are terrible. Some are, yeah, but so are some $20,000 a month facilities. It really depends on the staff and who's there at the time and who's visiting. So cookies and thorns. And if you don't have kids, make some friends who can do that. Really important. And make sure you have the right documents in place so they're authorized to look at your medical records and things like that. Advanced directive, power of attorney, updated living trust. So keys and thorns. Let's move on to our last real substantive subject, and we're going to go to some questions. We have some really good ones. So we've talked about this a little bit. When you're planning for long-term care, we talked about different ways to pay for it. You can use insurance, you can look at government programs, but the most basic way, of course, and with the most flexibility is your financial plan in making sure that you have the right one in place. And we are increasingly huge believers in the importance of integrated legal and financial planning. Now, what does that really mean? It means something different for every family, but at a high level, does your financial plan even address the issue of long-term care or the cost of care? Mike, I think you pointed out that it's very rare to see retirement calculators, of which there are many, that actually take into account this potentially massive cost at the end. They think, oh, you're good. You might not be, right? So any comments there?
Well, the calculators that I've looked at 4 or 5, kind of assume that you're going to retire. You get that image. Your feet are dangling over the edge of the sailboat in the Mediterranean, and that's retirement. And yeah, you know, you hope so, and it often is. But reality is, again, here we go. 70% of us are going to need some form of long-term care. Yeah. So the expectation you have about your expenditures when you're in retirement, well, they might go up from $5,000 a month to $20,000 a month. And what then? So how do you take that into account? What are the moving parts in your portfolio, retirement assets, fixed income? All of that has to be integrated. And that's what we're working very hard to deliver for you.
Yeah, and does it link with your legal plan? Are assets titled properly? Does your power of attorney address the right legal tool, the tax planning tools you need, and public benefits planning tools that you need? Are your accounts properly titled? Is one hand talking to the other? And really, again, so if you have an advisor you're already working with, we commonly work with financial advisors. And for those of you who don't have an advisor that you feel great about, and again, we're not trying to step on any toes, but for those who are looking for that new integrated team that can be there the long term, for select clients, we are now building some really, really cool options for integrated legal and financial planning. So contact us if you want to learn more. If you're an existing client, talk to us and gilfix.com for more. But regardless, I think it's critical that if you, let's say that you are, we see it both spouses, the husband or the wife, where often I've seen both cases where the wife is a whiz at managing money, the husband doesn't touch it, or the husband loves managing assets, the wife doesn't touch it. And they go, I don't need an advisor, I'm doing it myself. What happens if you become incapacitated when your assets are needed most? Who's keeping an eye on tax issues, on asset allocation, on inflation issues, on making sure the legal documents are integrated with financial planning documents? So again, we're hard at work at building some new options there, building some really cool partnerships we're really excited about. So contact us if you have questions about this. And if you like your financial advisor and we're working with you or any other attorney, make sure they're talking to each other. The one hand needs to be talking to the other. Is that a mixed metaphor? Hands talking to talking?
That works.
Yeah. So this has been a lot. When we have some great questions, we're going to get to those in just a second. So we're going to get to the end of our subjects here, but then we're going to get to questions and again, have some really good ones. So we have one ask, whether you work with us or not, we want you to spread the word about this. We've already reached tens of thousands of people. We're really proud of this. We just got over 60,000 views for our YouTube channel, our Gilfix Law YouTube channel. If you have a phone, you can point it at this QR code. You may be able to do it. If you want to subscribe, if you haven't yet, we invite you to subscribe. Our channel is growing every day. It's really fun, but it's my personal mission to reach millions rather than just thousands or tens of thousands as we are now. But regardless of the channel, if there's someone in your life, when it's a parent, a grandparent, a friend who's dealing with these issues, spread the word about this. We have over 100 now. I can't believe it. Some very short, some longer videos on our Gilfix Law YouTube channel, all totally free. Lots of information. We just did the calculation. Our firm has over 200 years of experience in legal, estate planning, financial planning, elder law, long-term care planning. We're pouring so much of that totally for free into our Gilfix Law YouTube channel. Of course, we want to work with you if we get the chance. And I've launched, so you can also go to YouTube to search for Gilfix Law on there. You can also search for Mark Gilfix. I've just launched a channel. I'm mainly doing short videos, very like 60-second things. So look for me, Mark Gilfix. I just launched it. I'm just getting started, but our Gilfix Law YouTube channel has a lot. You can point your phone at this QR code. And we're gonna get some action steps in just a second. So stay tuned. This is not just to get you to subscribe to our channel. God forbid we want to give you a bunch of free content. And I do think we've talked about this before, but in the age of AI, we are really worried that you're going to be faced with a fire hose of content created with AI tools by people who have no idea what they're talking about. It is shocking how easy it is to create a blog post or a website or even a video and make it seem like you know what you're doing. You can go to ChatGPT and you can have it create a framework. In fact, we might play around with that. Don't mess around with people who don't understand this on a deep level. Don't follow people just because they have a lot of slick looking content now. That used to be a sign they knew what they're talking about. But we need to have that team that you can trust. It's going to get harder and harder to tell humans apart from AI, and it's going to lead to disaster. So build that team. We, of course, want to be a part of that, gilfix.com. And let's just talk about some action steps right now. We've talked about a lot. What are just some near term, as we think about planning for long-term care, what are some critical action steps that you should take right now? The first thing is, do you have an updated estate plan? Do you have that revocable living trust, the power of attorney, the advance directive? Long-term care, by definition, means you're going to need help. That means you might not have capacity. That means having a sophisticated set of documents. And by that, I just mean set up by a team that really understands long-term care, asset protection, tax issues. So to address those issues, you have to have that in place ahead of time. Has it been a long time since you looked at it? You need to take a fresh look. If you have the wrong people named, it might be worse than no documents at all. If it's someone you don't like anymore that you named to take over your financial life. And documents done by non-specialists or online are often missing critical provisions that can mean the difference of hundreds of thousands of dollars for your family. As I said, do you have the right people named in your documents? Your backup trustees, your power of attorney, your advanced healthcare directive. A person you don't even like might be making all the decisions about controlling your life if you're ever out of it. That's not a good thing. Do you have an existing life insurance policy you haven't looked at for a while? You may be able to trade it in. Are you interested in pursuing a new life insurance hybrid life insurance, long-term care, or just a long-term care insurance policy? Does your financial plan address these issues? Has it been integrated with your financial plan? Are you worried about this? Have you thought about Prop 19 issues for your home? Well, of course, we can help. You can reach us at Gilfix.com. We're Gilfix and the Pole Associates. But even if you don't work with us right away, take a look at your documents, take a look at your estate plan, or do you have one? If you don't have one, you need it right away, or it could be an absolute disaster. But if you have one, let's take a fresh look at it. We encourage you to take action with us. We went through so much here. We get that. You might feel a little overwhelmed. It's okay if you do. It's our job to make sure that your dreams are achieved and your assets are preserved. So you can easily contact us at gilfix.com. You can contact us at 650-493-8070, 650-493-8070. I feel like an infomercial guy. It's not our main intent here, but we want to get the chance to help you and bring all these pieces together. We can very efficiently help you with that, and we want to make sure your dreams are achieved, that your worries are addressed, that you can sleep well at night. So Mike, before we go to questions, any thoughts that you want to add?
No, this is everybody's issue. And I'm just so glad that we have scores and scores and scores of individuals watching this webinar. Take it to heart. We might send a follow-up just to get you to share our channel with your friends and your relatives. We do know what we're doing. We are not AI. We are real people. We're in your circle of trust. You should have your physician in your circle of trust. Your CPA should be in your circle of trust. Your financial planner should be in your circle of trust. So that's differentiated from the AI world out there where anybody can look like they know what they're talking about. So yeah. I think that's a key, finding and relying on reliable advice.
And if it's been a while, if you have a plan in place, we can take a very efficient look at it and help you see, okay, what are you missing? What updates do you need to make? Let's think holistically about this. Again, we do not just do trusts or powers of attorney. We're experts at that. That's core of one of the areas we deliver services in. But we also think about these issues too. We are coaches for our clients. We are thought partners. We think through issues around real estate issues, about property tax issues, about capital gains tax issues, estate tax issues. I know it's a lot. You're outsourcing it to us. We can be part of that team, but just make sure you get that expert help. So reach us if you want to get going, or if you're an existing client, let's set that follow-up appointment to go through your current situation. And we have some really exciting new tools coming into play. I already see a few people who have asked us to reach out, so we will reach out to those who've just did that. We have one question, so we're gonna get some questions, and Bill asked a question, can you email me a copy of your slides? So we don't really send the slides out, but this presentation is on YouTube. So go to the Gilfix Law YouTube channel. You can go through, you can pause, you can rewind, because we change the slides over time, and sometimes without context, they can be taken the wrong way. So we don't really send the slides out, but hey, watch the recording. It's all there on the Gilfix Law YouTube channel. Pause, rewind. We're going to also introduce this as we break these up into smaller pieces as well. So if you want to watch just one specific section in about a week or two, this will be up there as well. So good question. And we do have the people who put your name and email information. We will reach out to you to set that initial appointment. So Mike, why don't you go through the questions that some of these good questions that we've got.
Sure. Yeah, a good question. One is, can I preserve, about Prop 19. Jeff asked, can I preserve my home's tax basis, avoiding the property tax increase for an adult stepkid? Boy, that's a great question, because before Prop 19, you still didn't have any protections for the stepkid. It had to be your child. Interestingly, before Prop 19 came into existence, we were achieving exactly what Jeff is asking. We have used comparable techniques. Short answer is absolutely yes, we can. We can, Jeff, absolutely. By the way, there's one or two questions about the income test in the context of Medi-Cal eligibility, and that it really doesn't exist. California looks at assets for eligibility. Many states look at income as the criterion. Income affects the amount you might have to pay for the cost of care, but it doesn't affect eligibility. So that's not California. That's not California.
We had one question. Are your integrated legal and financial planning services limited only to high net worth clients? Well, I think first, that term means a lot of different things to different people, right? In the Bay Area, high net worth probably means something very different than it does in Mike's hometown of East Tawas, Michigan, right? So I think talk to us. Especially as we launch the program, we're looking for different types that are especially a good fit. So reach out to us at gilfix.com. Use that free 15 minutes, and we're happy to chat with you about that to see. It depends on your situation. We want to make sure we can add significant value to you too. Good.
Yeah, I'll do one more. So Clark asked, okay, I've listened to many of your webinars, ours, myriad issues we have to address. Basically, fees could be large. I know planning is, what is the ballpark of cost to do the necessary planning?
Yeah.
So, the initial thing is it's an hour to an hour and a half consultation at our hourly rates. As the highest is $695. That's me. Mark is lower. Other attorneys in the office are lower.
$495, $525.
Yeah. So, given the impact that we have, we look at the return on your investment. We say folks hundreds of thousands, sometimes even more. Okay, you have to think about return for your investment. When we do a trust for a single person, usually between $2,800 and $3,200, depending on circumstances. Our fees are moderate if you compare them to anybody else's, and we believe we do even better. So beyond that, it's just going to depend. Sometimes it's a flat fee for work, sometimes it's hourly. Really and
Yeah.
truly, I'm not avoiding the question. Everybody's different. We make it
Right,
work.
and-
We make it worthwhile.
Yeah, and you think of it in two phases. One is the initial planning meeting where we sit down, and it's our mission to provide you with great value just in that first meeting. That is billed hourly once we're really sitting down and serving you. Again, this is an educational webinar. We can't give legal advice unless we're officially engaged by you. From there, we will make recommendations and we will give you the flat fees to, unless it's a very odd situation, to carry that out. For updating documents, we would give you the flat fees. So you would know after that first meeting, hey, I had great information. Maybe I'm not going to act on it now. Or hey, if I want to take action now, here's exactly what it'd be. And it can be a wide range, right? Sometimes it's $2,000 or $3,000, sometimes over $10,000. And it can be, if you're multi-million-dollar tax issues, it can be more. But again, we'd be clear with you on the return on investment, and you only make decisions that serve you and your family. Any other questions you want to go before we wrap this up?
There's only last question. I think we're better defer the rest. Jeff asked if we could say something about continuing care retirement communities. That's a good point.
Yeah.
So that's a community where there's 3 levels of care, typically independent living, assisted living if you need it, and if you need the highest level of care, they'll have what they usually call a health center, akin to nursing home care. Those facilities rarely, if ever, accept Medi-Cal. So that's private pay. Many of them, not all of them, have a substantial buy-in fee. I've written a couple of articles that talk about things you have to look for in the contracts if you enter into those facilities. You have to be very careful about their solvency. There have been a number of those communities that have gone out of business around the country, and people are stuck. So, we have a checklist of issues we go through with folks who are considering this, which can be a great solution.
Yeah, and actually, I want to flag one other thing. I heard this from a client actually a couple weeks ago. This is not something we discussed, nor do we necessarily recommend it. But if, let's say, you're really worried about this, you're like, I just have no idea how I'm going to pay for this. I don't have assets or whatever. Some people, and you might not like me sharing this here, Mike, but some people are moving to Southeast Asia, like the Philippines. The Philippines is the world's biggest exporter of caregivers. So if you don't have family here, you're really worried about having that support team. If you have no kids around, if you don't have assets, you're like, I just can't. I don't want to rely on just Medi-Cal. Some people are moving. So I just want to throw that in. I thought that was really interesting. I have not looked into it much, but some people are moving to Southeast Asia. We might see an increasing trend of that. Any thoughts, Mike, about that?
Yeah, be careful. They're going to Mexico for facelifts and tummy tucks and, being a careful consumer. So the problem with all of that is you're moving away from your community. Who's going to do the cookies and thorns? It's, hey, it's complicated. There's never one solution that fits. So I'd be careful.
Yeah, and I'll just address, someone else said, I'm interested in learning more about the integrated legal financial planning programs. So I think contact us, Gilfix.com, say, I watched the webinar, I have questions about this, and we'll set a time to chat with you for 15 minutes. It's a new program. We're really excited about it. But
and look, let's mention, to meet with the financial advisor, there's no cost for that. That's to see if he can help you. And if so, then, then you talk about what he might do and what the fees might be.
And it's actually, and we're building a network as a matter of, so there's a couple we're working with for different situations. But hey, so we went over an hour. Wow, this was amazing. And so many good questions. And I see 90% of the people are still watching. So thank you guys. You guys are ahead of the game. I want to deputize you. Spread the word. Share this video. Get other people to watch these. Again, we know not everybody's going to become a client, although we want to be able to take care of you. So contact us. Let's get the chance to serve you and your family, to make your dreams come true. At least hold on to what you have without making these big mistakes. So little mistakes can have a massive difference in the future for you and for your family and your children, and your children's children. So thank you so much. Let's spread the word. Let's get educated and empowered. Subscribe to our channel, follow us, stay in touch. We hope you got a lot out of this. And as my mom likes to say, I hope everybody stays safe, sane, and healthy. Let's all stay on top of this. We got your back. Have a great rest of your day.